If you really want to understand American politics today, you've got to look past the day-to-day headlines and see the huge shifts happening inside the major parties. And man, the Republican Party has gone through a transformation that's pretty much redrawn the entire political map. So let's get into it, how it happened, and what it all means. All right, so we're diving into the Republican Party, or, as you hear all the time, the GOP. We see the elephant, we hear the name constantly, but what it is today, that's a whole other story. So how did we get here, and what does the party actually stand for right now? Okay, so here's how we're going to break it all down. We're going to kick things off with its origin story, which is pretty surprising. Then we'll track some of its most dramatic ideological flips and pinpoint the recent populist takeover. After that, we'll lay out its platform today, and finally, take a look at the voters who make up this new coalition. All right, first up, the origin story. You probably know the basics, but the real history behind the party's name, its famous nickname, and that elephant mascot is way more interesting than you think. So that name, Republican, when the party was founded way back in 1854, the founders picked it on purpose. They wanted to connect back to the ideals of Thomas Jefferson's original party. They were basically saying, hey, we're the ones who believe in a government of the people, not a monarchy. And you've probably heard GOP a million times, right? Well, it stands for Grand Old Party. But get this, it started as the Gallant Old Party back in 1875. It was a nod to the party's role in winning the Civil War and keeping the country together. Over time, Gallant just sort of morphed into Grand, and the nickname stuck. Okay, this is my favorite bit of trivia. The elephant. Where in the world did that come from? Believe it or not, it all comes from this one cartoon from 1874 by an artist named Thomas Nast. It depicted a donkey in a lion's skin scaring all the other animals at the zoo, including a big bumbling elephant labeled the Republican vote. The image was so powerful it just stuck, and now it's the party's mascot forever. But you know, it's not just the symbols that have changed, not by a long shot. Over the past century, the GOP has done some major 180s on its core beliefs, and there is no better example of this than its total flip-flop on global trade. I mean, for a long time, the Republican Party was the biggest cheerleader for free trade. You had presidents like Reagan and George H.W. Bush who were all about tearing down economic walls between countries. In fact, NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, that was a huge Republican-backed deal. And then, bam. Fast forward to today, and you get Donald Trump, who didn't just question free trade, he proudly called himself a tariff man. What's so wild is that he was actually reaching back over 100 years, channeling another Republican president, William McKinley, who also called himself a tariff man. So yeah, we're talking a complete 180. The party of free trade, the party of NAFTA, became the party of America first, slamming the brakes on globalization and putting up high taxes on imports. It's a total shift from free trade to protectionism. And look, this wasn't just about money and trade. You see the same massive shift on social issues. This might blow your mind, but back in the 1970s, many top Republicans, we're talking presidents like Nixon and Ford, were actually pro-choice. Their views on abortion would be totally unrecognizable in the GOP of today. Okay, so all these big changes, they're all part of a much bigger story, the rise of populism. This isn't some small adjustment. It's a new force that has completely reshaped the party from the ground up. So what is right-wing populism anyway? Well, in the US context, it's this idea that politics is a big fight between the real people on one side and a corrupt, out-of-touch elite on the other. It's often fueled by a major distrust of institutions, like the media or even mainstream science, and it puts a heavy emphasis on an America-first approach to the rest of the world. And man, when you look at the timeline, you see just how fast this all went down. It really kicked off with the anti-establishment Tea Party movement around 2009. Then it just exploded in 2016 with Donald Trump's surprise win. The tension really came to a head on January 6th. And by 2024, Trump had locked up his third nomination in a row, basically cementing the populist wing's control of the party. And this takeover didn't happen without a fight. It created these massive cracks inside the party. It pushed out longtime establishment figures and led to a total split between Donald Trump and his own vice president, Mike Pence. Pence ended up refusing to endorse him in 2024, saying that anyone who puts themselves over the Constitution shouldn't be president. Okay, so the populists are in the driver's seat. What does that actually mean for policy? What does the party stand for right now? Let's dig into the platform. Let's start with the environment. And wow, the gap between the parties here is just huge. As you can see, a big majority of Democrats see climate change as a major threat, but the number of Republicans who feel the same is not only low, it's actually gone down a bit in recent years. And it's the same story with gun policy. I mean, look at this divide. It's massive. You've got 86% of Democrats who want stricter gun laws, but only 23% of Republicans feel the same way. In fact, for a lot of Republicans, the view is the complete opposite of the Democratic one. All right, so rounding out the platform, you've got a few other core ideas. Economically, it's low taxes and cutting back on regulations. For healthcare, a strong opposition to any government-run system. On justice, it's a tough-on-crime approach, and when it comes to elections, there's a big push for tighter voting laws, usually based on concerns about fraud. So, we've talked policy, now let's talk about the people. Who exactly is voting Republican these days? Because just like the policies, the voter base has gone through a massive realignment too. You know, if there's one single trend you need to understand, it's this thing analysts call the diploma divide. It's this massive political split based on whether or not someone has a college degree. For years and years, college grads tended to vote Republican. Now, it's completely flipped. The GOP has become the party of voters without a college degree. And nothing, I mean nothing, shows this divide better than these two maps from the 2020 election. Look at the one on the left. Among white voters without a college degree, Trump won by a staggering 35 points. Now look at the one on the right. Among white voters with a college degree, he actually lost. That's not a small shift, that's a political earthquake. Okay, so let's pull all that together. The Republican base today is generally strongest in the South, the Great Plains, and in rural America. Core groups include white evangelical Christians and older voters, and a huge part of its energy is coming from working-class voters, especially men who don't have a college degree. So here's the thing. This whole realignment, it's not done. Not even close. The party today is this uneasy mix of populists, libertarians, and more traditional conservatives, all under one roof. So the real question, the billion-dollar question is, as these different groups keep battling it out, what will the grand old party even stand for in the next generation?